Somebody called yesterday.
We're recording.
Meeting will please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Berard, Funderburk, Levine, and Noonan present.
This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. I have no opening remarks. Do we have any public comment cards?
Nothing for item 2.
Okay. General Manager.
Yes, one item, as you know, or maybe you don't know, our CFO Jeff Peltola is going to retire at the end of this year.
That's very unpleasant information.
Very unpleasant.
It's unpleasant, but it's balanced with something very pleasant. So we have selected Neil, and Neil Guglielmo.
Well, I can see he's already more popular than Jeff.
Neil has been with the department for a number of years. In fact, he's been with the city of Los Angeles since 1990. So a very, very seasoned vet. And then he was a CFO for LA Sanitation, the CAO, and a senior administrative officer or analyst as well. A housing department assistant general manager. He's again been here for several years, kind of being prepped for this position, if you will, or being given the opportunity to prep for this position is probably the best way to put this. And because we're such a large organization and our financial condition is so important, I'm appointing Neil today, and he and Jeff will now work through the balance of the year together and transition everything from Jeff to Neil. Probably not everything, Neil. You want to edit some of that. But we'll be doing a really smooth transition, and this is really through succession planning. What we should be doing is identifying somebody in advance and giving them about 6 months to really act in that position. Neil is at the table today, at the horseshoe, if you will. Jeff will be sitting out first row and can come up if we need anything, but a really good way for Neil to take the reins while still having Jeff here as a backstop. So I am thrilled. I couldn't imagine a better selection. LEDWP is extremely lucky to have somebody so talented and so prepared for this position. And I appreciate that Neil said yes, that he said it with open arms, that would take this on, and I don't think we could do better. So thank you, Neil, and thank you, Jeff. Has done a great job, and I really appreciate this transition because I think it's the best thing for the department and, most importantly, our customers.
Thank you. Okay, good. Comments from commissioners?
I did have a...
Commissioner Funderburk.
No, you first, Commissioner.
We have such polite commissioners. Commissioner Noonan.
Okay, well, I regret missing our last board meeting. Our family was in Washington, D.C., which really paid tribute to our collective work, not only on a statewide but federal level. And I learned probably more than my children did during that trip. So thank you for forgiving my absence during that time. I was very, very pleased during my absence that the Paiute tribe has been given or reattributed their main source of water through the leaky pipe. I understand that this is a very complicated issue, and perhaps I did step my boundaries as a commissioner, and I did apologize for offending the general manager as well as the president. I did so truly with a pure heart, but I'm very, very grateful that this tribe now has water. So I thank all of you that were involved, especially you, Richard. You were very, very responsive in remedying that issue, so thank you.
Commissioner Funderburk?
Yes. One of the things that I've been quietly working with the general manager and his staff on relates to concerns that I have related to this city's ratepayers, 1/10 of whom come from families with undocumented immigrants. And based on the recent Pew study, the mayor recently issued Executive Directive 20 related to that population, trying to make sure that the population's embraced and the feeling of fear is mitigated. And I'd like to ask if staff could somehow prepare a report on how we're implementing Executive Directive 20, which I think applies to most of the agencies in the city, in our, as DWP is the face of the city, and is the every other month people see us, and people also through the billing system, and they also see us through our meter readers and our presence throughout the city. So I'd like to get a report back on how we're implementing that. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Barad.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend our staff for being so accessible and coming out to the neighborhood councils. On March the 18th, the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council had a tree giveaway, and it's become so popular that this was our third annual one. We work with City Plants, LA City Plants, and David Jaco and Elizabeth Scarrett, and we this year gave away 250 trees. The people were lined up around the block. It was a real community event. There were things there for kids, and we had a booth from DWP where people were explaining the electric vehicles. We sold rain barrels and explained the rebate program. The important thing is that now the community, the ratepayers, see DWP as people, and as they're really there. It's not just some building up on the hill and where they get their bills every couple of months. And I just are so appreciative of all that we've done. And then at the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, where we had standing room only about 250 people with all the councils in the valley, again, DWP had a booth there. They gave out light bulbs, which everyone loved, and the low-flow shower heads, and talked about the electric vehicles. Everyone had questions about electric vehicles. And so this is just so important. And I know since my first day on this board 4 years ago, I've been talking about community outreach, community outreach. Now it really is, it's a reality. And I just want to know, I want you to know how appreciative we all are of your efforts. Thank you.
Comments from ratepayer advocate.
No specific comments at this time.
Okay, policy discussion number 6 is also captured on agenda item 22. I would recommend that we defer the policy discussion to the agenda item and see if anybody wishes to discuss it. If I don't know whether we need a discussion on it or not, but we don't need it twice on the agenda. So I would suggest that we, I don't know if a motion is required for a policy discussion, Council.
You do that as president.
Okay, thank you. Management report, Power Resiliency Program, its features and practices. You've got item 6 up there as opposed to item 7.
Yeah, I think we want the next one, Rich. There we go. All right. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Marvin Moon. I'm Director of Power Engineering. And with me is Bill Harriott. He's the Section Manager for Distribution, Construction, and Maintenance. Today we're going to talk briefly about the power system and resiliency, some of the lessons learned moving forward. You know, my definition of resiliency is basically the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And all that to say is we've had those things always come up. And so the extent that we're ready, is very important. We participate in a number of city initiatives over the last few years. Most notably, there was an initiative called Resiliency by Design that came out with 17 recommendations, even transmission recommendations. The mayor came out with his sustainability plan in 2015, which talked about not only things like solar and energy storage, smart grid technologies, power reliability, and most recently there's a new initiative called Resilient Los Angeles, which is kind of a holistic look at resiliency among the various departments. And of course, it does take into account these various aspects of resiliency. The first two items, or three items, kind of center around lowering demand. To the extent that you don't have as much demand to recover from, helps a lot. It also talks about diversity of resources, how we get our power from various different places, but also on the customer end as well. And of course, power reliability is paramount to resiliency, as well as preparation. So lessons learned. Everyone talks about the Northridge earthquake and other earthquake events, but there's actually a whole host of events that have caused adversity. It's things like heat waves and rainstorms and windstorms and cars hitting poles. Whatever it takes, there's all sorts of things. But earthquake is a good example of how we respond. For example, with that initiative, there was lots of damage everywhere. And the various utilities came together on the West Coast utilities and actually built standards around how you build things, particularly in substation environments. And we did a lot of upgrades totaling over $300 million since that time. An example is the lower left corner. You see a reactor, it's a device in a substation, is sitting up on this big tripod. Before the previous design, it just collapsed and it just fell down to the ground. And on the right is our Sylmar converter station. That handles over 3,000 megawatts of power coming in from the Pacific Northwest. That fell down as well. And now this is about an 80-foot ceiling, and so all these equipment is hanging from the ceiling, so if there's an earthquake, it can swing left and right. Here are some examples of the projects we've worked on. We've had one program went from 1997 to 2005, reinforcing 35 of our substations. We had another program with our receiving stations. These are the large bulk power stations that serve the neighborhoods. We put $110 million into that, changing out a lot of equipment. We've recently upgraded our distribution station 34 because some of these walls are very old and very masonry structures that don't meet current code. And the Sylmar converter station went through an upgrade of $125 million. And our current project is a $30 million project to upgrade another 11 substations. People kind of say, when in doubt, make it stout. That's kind of a lot of truth to that. Sometimes if you just do a little bit more work, a little more reinforcing goes a long way. For example, we have welds with just an 1/8-inch thicker weld made it about 25% stronger. Those are the kind of things we learned from our process and working and testing things. We buy equipment now that once was very brittle and it has to be shaken and tested for earthquakes before we issue it. And construction techniques have changed as well. For example, now we're using a lot of rubber and polymeric insulators and bushings and so on. In fact, here's an example. This is a lightning arrestor or surge arrestor that's used on our distribution poles, and they have similar ones in substations as well. The old style they were made out of porcelain, very heavy, very brittle, but the new ones are made out of rubber. It's actually better electrically and lasts longer, and they don't break. You can drop them and they won't break. So this is the kind of construction that we're using now in our substations and on our poles. So let me turn it over to Bill to talk about the distribution system.
Okay, thank you. Okay, when we look at distribution system and our power reliability, there's a lot of steps we have taken in the power system. We have a high standard in our specifications where we not only are using wood, fiberglass, steel, and concrete poles, but the wood poles we use now, we rate them at a higher rating so the poles are heavier and can withstand more weather and more elements. Another thing that we do is, the new practices like Marv mentioned with polymer insulators. We use polymer and plastic on not just the insulators that support conductors, but also the transformers themselves. We specify specify that transformers that are delivered to water and power now, we aren't using porcelain that are fragile. It can break just in the installation of a transformer. A lot of them actually come with plastic bushings on them as well. So another thing that we've done is in the design process of installing power poles in our overhead distribution system, we use a wind loading calculation software program so that we have to determine exactly what is going to be going on our power poles, conductor, transformers, things of that nature, risers for overhead to underground conversions. All of that has to be taken into consideration for the location where it is in the city and the type of wind loading or wind events that area may sustain. Okay, this next slide here, this is some of our new construction methods and practices. If you look at the photograph on the upper left-hand corner there, that's one of the from our inspection maintenance program. That picture was sent to us. It's deterioration to crossarms, wooden crossarms, usually caused by the infestation of termites, followed by water migration into the wood, causing it to rot and decay. If you look down below that on the slide in the lower left corner, those are actually fiberglass crossarms. We specify fiberglass crossarms now in replacement on power poles. When we do our power system reliability, majority of the arms that we replace, the wooden arms, they are replaced with these fiberglass because they are resistant to all that. They're resistant to termites. They don't rot. Woodpeckers don't attack them. And believe it or not, even though they're hollow and they're foam filled, they're stronger than wood products. When you look at the upper right-hand picture there, that is an illustration of one of our older cross-arm transformer rack constructions. A couple things here that we take into consideration. First of all, this construction it consists of 5 to 6 crossarms to support the transformers, and again is susceptible to decay and termites. And what we've done is, working with our power engineering group, we've come up with these. With the lower right-hand picture illustration there is it's a aluminum rack that replaces the 5 to 6 crossarms. So first of all, it's saving the department quite a bit of money up front because of the fact that it's cheaper. It is seismically tested, so it's as strong, if not stronger, than the crossarms. And so it's, plus being lighter weight, it's easier for crews to install on power poles. Okay, moving on. Our infrastructure inspections. We have an extensive inspection program. We inspect both overhead and underground facilities. We do a detailed inspection program, and it is set up on time schedules. And in that program, our inspectors enter data onto a dashboard along with pictures. So they'll go down into a substructure. And this has helped us out in a couple ways. Not only are we documenting and recording our assets, our physical assets in the field, but it also assists our engineers, because in the past, engineering, when they would receive a request for a new business installation where they would have to go out and install cables, maybe transformers and equipment, they would have to have a field crew meet with them at that location so they can enter the substructure to determine what they could actually add onto our system in that substructure. Through our inspection and maintenance program, now that they take pictures of all 4 walls, north, south, east, west, in the substructures, it's documented, it's on the dashboard. Engineers can go and see when the last pictures were taken to get a current a visual of that vault, see if they can construct for new business customers. Okay, moving on with vegetation inspection management. We have certified arborists that manage our program. They have tree trimming cycles where they will go out and inspect our overhead conductor lines and ensure that we have no tree versus wire incidents out there. They're always on. They're always busy because of the fact, of course, we've had a fairly wet winter and we've had some very dry seasons before this. So the growth patterns are going to change depending on the species of plant, the locations where they are. If they're on the northern aspect hillside, north of Mulholland Drive, Vegetation grows much quicker and faster there than it does, let's say, on the south aspect, on the south side of Mulholland Drive. So they're very busy. They keep a very good inspection program going for us and a tree removal program. It was mentioned by Ms. Broad, the incident happened in Sherman Oaks area, I believe, with the pine tree that fell down. That pine tree was actually on a private property. Okay, it wasn't. Our tree trimming program, unfortunately, would have helped us in that situation because this tree had died and during a storm it had fallen across a road, an entire side street, and then taken out our overhead facilities. So that's something our tree inspectors have had to look at due to the recent years of drought. Now they're looking at trees that are dying on private property and meeting with customers and working out arrangements with them to have those trees removed, because even though they meet all the requirements that we are bounded by law to keep as far as brush clearance from our conductors, the threat of those trees going into our conductors is something that we take very seriously.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
And I've been posed this question various times throughout my tenure serving on this board, and I do think it's a very complex issue in that annually our family receives a letter from the fire department stating you are in charge of maintaining your landscape, and if you don't, we're going to fine you, we're going to be visiting your home. By the same token, I know that the department has done a wonderful job of collaborating with tree people and other organizations to increase planting trees, especially in rural areas where the citizens can benefit from that shade, thereby reducing their energy, air conditioning costs. You hear testaments like what you just stated. So how does the department work with the fire department, with organizations like Tree People, to make sure that, trees obviously benefit our environment, they help the department by reducing energy costs. There also was a time when we were rebating people, changing their landscapes to turf, which has now changed. So given this summary of events, how could you best summarize what our objective and how we are collaborating with important authorities on this matter?
I honestly don't have an answer for that right now, but I have taken a note on that. I live in a unincorporated area of Los Angeles County, and I receive those notices around this time every year saying, they're going to come by and inspect my property, and if I don't have brush clearance within 100 feet of my home, that I will be cited. So never been cited, so I've taken care of it. But that is a good
I'll
question.
jump in a little bit. So on the water system, obviously we're one of the largest landowners within the city of Los Angeles. So the way we interface with that is we have those same requirements as well. So we have to clear away from all of our structures and the property lines. And so we have standing agreements with the fire department. We actually use their crews to help cut back brush on our property. So it's not necessarily promote or dispromote, but that's how we interface with that particular issue on just property management and maintenance. Yeah.
Please.
No, we've also recently at our Hollywood Reservoir had, I believe it was County Fire, to come in and help trim some of our trees just for fire protection as well.
So, in my humble opinion, I think that because of the many different opinions and entities that have approached our board, whether it's rebates on cutting back on watering, whether it's the fire department, whether it's planting an additional 250 trees, I think that not in the immediate future, but perhaps within the next 4 to 6 months, if you could provide an education to the public, I think that'd be very useful, because as confused as they are, I also don't have the right answer. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along to preparedness. Okay, we spoke a little bit about materials that we have, but we also we kind of have a stockpile of emergency materials and equipment that we utilize during any type of incident or event, whether it be an earthquake, a fire, or a rainstorm. Recently, I know you're quite aware of the Blue Cut fire that happened up the 15, okay? During that event, we had 2 of our transmission lines we lost, Victorville Century 1 and Victorville Century 2. Well, the crews had to go out there and do replacement of insulators on towers, and they also had to reconductor over 123,000 feet of overhead transmission conductor. I wish I would have had a sample of that to bring you, because that's pretty impressive. So next time around. But, you know, they utilize emergency restoration structures for our transmission lines. They were utilized back in the '94 earthquake up in the hills above Sylmar, north end of Los Angeles, where we had towers that were sliding off the hillside. They were able to go up there with cranes and these emergency restoration structures to get the transmission circuits back on as quickly as possible for the city of Los Angeles. So we utilized a lot of this equipment. Next slide, please. Okay, you're there. Preparedness, communications, exercise drills. Recently, we put together this mobile communication trailer. It's outfitted with all DWP communication systems, has a portable microwave system as well. This trailer can communicate back to the city no matter where it's located. And we conduct exercises and drills. The power system works through our Office of Emergency Management to ensure the readiness of the power system. We conduct earthquake safety drills, operational readiness. We work with Operations Center and also with the Emergency Command Center on drills, tabletop type drills. Okay, also, if you recall, we did assist Long Island Power Authority during Hurricane Sandy to restore power out there on the East Coast. Most recently, this past winter, Pacific Gas and Electric requested mutual aid from all the power utilities and contractors on the western United States. Water and Power sent a couple of crews into that area, and we received a lot of praise from Pacific Gas and Electric for the work that our crews performed up there for them. This is something that we do through our mutual aid contracts. We work with California Utilities Emergency Association, Western Regional Mutual Assistance Agreement, which was the one that was used with PG&E, Southern California Public Power Authority, and the American Public Power Association. Now, one of the things that we do is we get together and we do these training tabletops, and we talk about lessons learned, and we try to just build and improve on things year after year. And that's all I have.
Very impressive. Questions, comments?
No, just
Plaudits,
thank you.
praise?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right,
It's
thank you.
obviously critically important, and it's a very impressive presentation.
I think the last statement, if it's okay by you, during recent board meetings, we have talked about cybersecurity threats. I know how we assisted New York when they needed our assistance, and so I am very grateful that you are aligned with these contracts, and that we're all helping each other in case of an emergency attack. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will skip item 8 for the moment and go to item 9, monthly report, FSO January.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, we have the FSO monthly activities report available if you have any questions.
Any questions?
I did have some questions for you, Neil. Our investments in battery storage, electric vehicles, and stormwater capture, is that broken out, or can you point me to where I would find those in a report like this, or do I wait for the budget?
I would wait for the budget, sir. It's not really broken out. This is more of a high-level look at our net income and our balance sheet and such. But when we get to the budget discussions, we can point out exactly where that's funded in the budget for the upcoming year as well as the current year.
Okay. Other questions? Bill? You have one? RPS report, February.
The RPS report is in your board packet, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Questions?
I did. Again, one, I want to thank somebody who I don't think is here, Marty Adams. He attended a meeting with the Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council Sustainability Council, Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council Sustainability Committee that some of my neighbors helped to found, and is, I don't know if it's through the Sustainability Office or whatever, but the Greater Wilshire is going to be doing a big launch on electric vehicles, which seem to be a big important component of our demand strategy on that. And again, in that vein, I'm just a little. Are the electric vehicle chargers in the sustainability section or the power section?
So we have funding for the rebates.
Yeah.
That would be more the sustainability section. But the planning, design, the engineering work, the work that Marvin Moon and his staff do in the electric vehicles, be more in the power section of the budget.
So I wanted to thank Marvin also, because he and I have been trying to get to the bottom of exactly how many electric vehicles there are in the city of Los Angeles that are registered without having to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get the information. And I think we've gotten that down, and we've been able to figure it out by zip code. I think that this is something that is more than just a yearly thing that the board would be well informed of. You have 400 or 500,000 Tesla orders coming online in the next 6 to 18 months. A disproportionate amount of those will be going to California, not just California's population, which I think is around 10% of the 10 or 15% of the country, but a significantly higher amount. And based on and because the sales figures, because the Teslas will be more affordable, priced in the $30,000 range before any rebates, we could see a surge of electric vehicles coming into our market in the next year to year and a half. And I think that tracking where our electric vehicle chargers are and what our expenditure of these is going to be very important. I've asked separately for an alternatives analysis in the budget context of, tripling our battery, not our battery, but our electric vehicle charger inventory to find out how much more it would cost the ratepayers, so that if it costs more, we can at least go in with eyes wide open as to why we did or didn't do it. I think that it seems that electric vehicles and the infrastructure associated with it will be a very big part of our demand as demand goes down because of energy efficiency and otherwise, and net metering and behind the meter activities that are going on. So I think that monitoring, by the way, if there's another way of monitoring it for that, then I would defer to you, Dave, and your staff. But I want to thank Marv for being on the receiving end of my persistence and trying to get to the bottom of this. And thanks to you, Neil, also for being responsive. So if there's a way that we can get some more regular reporting on this issue, and not just a report, but how does it relate to the bigger policy of electric vehicles meeting our demand in the next 2 years in a greater way than they already are, I think would be helpful. So is that something that can, great, thank you.
I just want to be clear what you're asking. Are you asking for some kind of inventory of where the charging stations are? I'm
asking for how how much how much we're spending and how many chargers are going in. I think that the inventory of where the charging stations are is covered under the Equity Metrics Data Initiative. I think that that's one of the actually reports that we get every 6 months.
So we do know that.
So the charging
Where the
stations we
stations
do,
are.
but what we don't know, it's fine to know where the charging stations are, but what about the demand? So we
Yes.
didn't know exactly where the electric cars were. So
Yeah.
it's fine to have chargers equitably distributed, but if the cars aren't, and if the cars,
Yes.
and some type of explanation, just so that we can understand that.
Well, one of the questions that came out of both the events that I talked about previously, that people said that they were hesitant to get electric vehicles because they didn't know where they were going to get them charged. And they didn't want to have to go looking all around to see where they were going to have a charging station. So I'm wondering, what is the process? Are we, for where we're putting the charging stations, how are we involving our various communities throughout the city? And then do we have an idea of, how we're speaking to the need, the increasing need of charging stations? And how do we let people know about it?
Absolutely. From the budget perspective, we can show you where those numbers are. I think in terms of the design, the planning that goes into the chargers, obviously Marvin's group has got that under wraps. And then we also have the relationships with other agencies such as Bureau of Street Lighting, and how we're partnering with them to put additional EV chargers on the light posts across the city of
Are
Los
they doing
Angeles.
that?
They are doing that. They do have, I want to say about 40 or 50 in place now. Marvin can probably qualify for that. But they've released a plan. They shared a plan with the City Council and the Mayor's office regarding those EV chargers on poles.
Yes, Commissioner. Bureau of Street Lighting has installed 32 of them so far on their street light poles. We've installed 2 of them so far on wood power poles and are piloting that initiative. Also, we are currently installing 183 chargers on other city properties based on a grant we received from the Energy Commission. That work's going to be completed in May. So the number of chargers on city property is expanding. I'm working with the general manager on an expanded program based on the Commissioner's request. So we'll have more to report moving forward.
Now, once there's a charging station, I know, let's say it's in the parking area for a supermarket, who monitors that?
Well, there are several large charging companies out there, like ChargePoint and Green Lots and NRG, and they have a back office, and they handle all the customer complaints in the buildings and so on. About half of the chargers out there are just installed by the property owners and are called typically non-networked or dumb chargers. So there's no one monitoring except the property owner in that case. So it's a mix.
All right, because I know that in some cases, I've been told that people will pull their car in there and then charge it, and then they're gone for hours and hours and hours because it's a really good parking space. So how do we handle that? Is there any way to monitor that?
Yes, there's a number of strategies that folks use to keep the cars moving. For example, what's often used is if you have to pay to use the charger, sometimes the pay it might be free for the first few hours, then you have to pay after that. So the idea is keep the cars moving, and some are based on time, how long you're hooked up. So the longer you're hooked up, whether you're charging or not, you're paying money. So it's different strategies folks use.
But we are using those.
Yes, right. For example, downstairs in our parking lot, we have it's free parking for the first 4 hours, or free charging for the first 4 hours. Then after that, they have to pay full parking rates. So people get it done and then they move on to avoid the charges.
How long does it take to charge a car, or is it different?
Yeah, it's typically about, most charging sessions are under 3 hours on a level 2 charger. That's the 240-volt chargers. Most are done, in fact, in the 2 to 2.5 hour range. If you just use a 110 wall plug, like in your garage, that could take most of the night. So these level 2 chargers are 3 to 5 times faster than a wall plug.
Well, how are we letting people know where the charging stations are?
There are a number of very good apps out there for cell phones. The best one out there is PlugShare, which was merged with a company called Recargo. And it's actually it's kind of a social media thing where people even rank the chargers, and it covers both networked and non-networked chargers, and it's very robust. There's another one operated by the Department of Energy, which is very good as well.
It seems like there should be more broader outreach rather than just an app. And I'm wondering, in our bills, can we put some kind of on the insert about how to find a charging station?
We can do that. The app's probably the more up-to-date approach, but we can refer them to the app on our bill.
On the bill.
I think this is part of what Commissioner Funderburk had put down. We need to bring back a comprehensive discussion of EVs and chargers, and our kind of where we stand now, where we see that we need to go, where the funds are budgeted, what kind of mitigation we can get as an early adopter of extra charging. So it's a absolutely timely issue.
It's timely.
So my thought that I've written down as a note is to come back with a complete comprehensive area, and then have for discussion some areas and some targets that we might probably need a stronger interaction with all the apps related to EVs and where the exact charging station is, and some of how we ensure that people do get out of charging stations. For me, the alternative is I'd like to see more charging stations so that you literally could go shop for 4 hours and not worry about running out 2 hours in the middle because you're going to get a ticket or something, because we've got so many charging stations that we're not. That's when I say we, as a city, whether they're privately owned or publicly owned, that there's ways to meet that so that it's convenient for the public, but also meeting the needs of sustainability. So we will bring back something that's just trying to touch every different area and how we're meeting those goals.
That's good, because it certainly is very timely. And if we're hearing that people are hesitant to get the car because they don't know where they're going to charge it, then we know that we're not getting the word out as to where these spots are.
And I know I said repeatedly, we've got to have chargers before EVs become really prevalent in the market, because if you aren't sure where to charge it, you're not going to buy the car.
That's what's happening.
Right. And I will say, this isn't a chicken or the egg.
No.
It's not kind of one or the other. We have to have the chargers before anything else is going to happen.
Right.
So staff is already looking at how to budget more and more for the chargers and the rebates and everything, and we'll put that in the presentation.
Good. That's good. Good. Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Mel.
CAO report?
The report is in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? No. 9B, investment report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2016.
The report's been submitted. We have staff here if you have any questions.
Any questions? Barbara, item 10, discussion with neighborhood council representatives on any neighborhood council resolution or community impact statement filed with the city clerk which relate to any agenda item listed or being considered on this agenda for the Water and Power Board.
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Approval of the minutes, agenda item 11. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 4th, Commissioners Levine, Barad, and Funderburk present?
So moved.
Second? Do you have a comment, Commissioner?
Yeah, I did have a comment. There was something that I just thought needed to be clarified, and I'm going to.
Item 4.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Jill. For item 4, this request was made to bring back the alternatives analysis before approval of the budget, but is the budget being approved next?
No, Commissioner, the final budget for the coming fiscal year will be presented on May 16th.
On May 16th, okay.
Yes.
May 16?
Yes.
So the alternatives analysis, or at least a response to this, will be forthcoming?
It would be
before
hopefully the next board meeting be May 2nd.
Okay, great.
And we should let you know that there's a number of questions related to the budget, so there will be several presentations next meeting on the budget, so it's going to be all budget all the time for next meeting.
All budget, all the time.
So the motion to approve the minutes is moved and seconded. Any other discussion?
No, thank you.
Those in favor?
Aye.
They're approved. We have the agenda items of items 12 through 24. We have 12 through 26, excuse me. We have one speaker card on item 24, and I guess I need to recuse myself on item 26. Are there any other items 12 through 23 and item 25 that any commissioners would like removed from the consent calendar?
Yes.
Commissioner Barad.
12 and 18.
12 and 18. Any others?
20, 21, and potentially 23. I'm just being apprised, given the fact that I missed the last board meeting in closed session. I want to make sure that as a standing committee member, that I'm apprised as to what item 23 is about.
So I'll pull that one also. So is there a motion to approve items 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 22, and 25?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those items are approved. So we still have items 12, 18, 20, 21, 23, 24, and 26. We'll start with item 12, Commissioner Barad.
Good morning. Lou Feldmeyer, Assistant Director, Supply Chain Services.
Okay.
Michael Gutierrez, Supply Services Manager, Supply Chain Services.
I just wanted some education on this about ready mixed concrete and slurry mixtures, and it says that there's no viable alternative and that they're routinely used. On our packet, page 2 of this, it says that the bid was divided into 6 geographic areas. And as a result, DWP received 6 bids. And if you could just discuss this a little bit, why does that mean that there are 6 different companies, that each company is doing a different geographic area?
We broke it down into geographical areas to attempt to get more participation on the bids. So yeah, there weren't necessarily 6 for each group, but there was 6 across the board.
But is there a different company doing the work for each of these geographic areas?
In this particular case, all 6 were awarded to the same vendor.
It was just coincident, Gwen Williams, it was just coincidental that there happened to be 6 areas and 6 bids.
All right, but I still don't know the answer to the question.
No, your question is, was there a company for each area?
Yes.
No.
It was 6 bids, and you chose one?
I think they're saying that one company bid for each of the 6 areas, and that one company received all 6 bids.
Was the successful bidder on all
For
6
all 6.
geographical areas.
So the one company is doing all 6.
Right.
Yes.
Because the others, most of them were non-responsive.
Okay. And do you see, because it's group-based on the geographic areas, were there bids kind of written with those areas in mind? Did they have experience in those areas? Do you see that there's a difference from one geographic area to another?
We went ahead and listed the 6 geographical areas to, again, open up the opportunity for competition within those 6 areas. As a result, we have six bid responses, and many of those, or most of those, were able to submit a bid in some of the areas, but not all the areas.
Yes.
And in some of the areas, they were not able to bid on all the line items within that area. And that was one of the requirements of the bid proposal.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't we divide them into geographic areas because it's easier for them to deliver? Their delivery costs may not be as great.
Right, in that industry, that's a big part of the cost, is hauling the ready-mix concrete.
Okay.
So if we lump them into one, there would probably be very few people that could bid it because they're not all over those geographic areas. So we divide them to spur competition. So if they're closer to one geographic area, their transportation costs are going to be lower, so therefore they're going to be more competitive with their bid.
But it's still one company that's doing...
Well, because the others were non-responsive.
All right. So in these, how do they, and how, chronologically, or how are they going to be scheduled? Because they can't do all 6 at once, or can they? Or do they just, how do they schedule?
They have multiple facilities that would be able to provide service to us.
And how do they decide then which one do they start with?
Each of the one company that was awarded has the capacity to serve all 6 geographical locations simultaneously because of the way they're structured throughout the basin. So as work is scheduled, it's called in and we have orders for work throughout the basin, and then the company schedules it and they perform services or they provide that material to each of these locations.
Because it's not all delivered at one time. When we have a need for it, then we call them up and then they schedule.
Because that was my question. It didn't say that it was simultaneously.
I meant...
It's an
what was
as-needed
simultaneous?
basis.
Pardon me?
As-needed basis, as we need service in that particular geographical area.
All right, so that's part of my question, is how are you determining the need in a particular
Well, the need
area?
would be if, the water department is digging up the street and doing main line, trunk line work, or the power system is laying conduit, then we go ahead and have to backfill the street, and they'll let us know that service is required, in that area at that time. So it's scheduled work.
Okay, based on need. Okay.
Based on need.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
To approve. Thank you. We move to item 18, standard offer for load shift or load reduction electric service agreement. Agreements will be for 2 years or 2 summers and will offer a monthly incentive of $10 per kilowatt for reduced or shifted electricity usage. Commissioner Barad.
Okay, Neil?
Yes. Hi, Commissioner. Good morning again.
Good morning.
Yes. Go ahead.
What I would like to know is how the gas company interacts with DWP. How does this all work together? Because we have people in the valley, in the North Valley, who are very concerned, about this. And I think some of the information from the gas company varies from day to day. So if you could just talk about the connection here.
Okay, if I can answer that, Ray Coker. The power system uses gas. We do not use gas from Aliso or SoCal Gas. We bring our own gas. But we do require the use of their pipeline in order to bring gas to our generators. So if there's an event at Aliso Canyon or if there's a shortage, then the gas generators are considered a non-core customer. So we're the first ones that are curtailed. So we have to, there's a number of mitigation measures that have been put into effect so that we can more effectively manage the gas usage and help assure that we're not leaning on Aliso Canyon or the SoCal Gas. So from the department's perspective, we manage our gas use. We ensure that the gas that we bring through the pipeline is the amount that we're going to use to run our generation. So it means managing and projecting the need for our local generation. Our generation locally frequently is to mitigate transmission constraints, so we know that we do need a certain amount of gas, and we have taken a number of measures to reduce our reliance on gas to the extent we can. This is one of those measures that helps reduce the amount of gas we need for the summer season, our peak.
This is essentially a way for the very largest customers who can reduce a significant amount of load during peak hours to have an agreement with them so that they'll reduce the amount of electricity during those peak times in the summer so we can rely less on natural gas so that we don't have to rely on or don't have to worry about the gas company relying on Aliso. So this is a way to try to reduce our natural gas usage during peak times, which then helps the gas company away from Aliso. Our goal is really to reduce our power needs.
Isn't this just repeating what we did last summer?
Yes, it is.
Now, State Senator Henry Stern had some legislation about this. How does that impact on what we're doing, if at all?
So the legislation that is proposed is prior to determining the future of Aliso, that we have the root cause analysis to determine exactly what went wrong.
Yes.
So working through that process.
So, all right, so then if that is delayed, then how does that affect?
So there are
us?
provisions in that bill that would allow the governor to declare an emergency if there was a shortage or a need for Aliso. So that to prevent some catastrophic event because the electric system is reliant on gas. So,
But this doesn't impact that legislation.
no, it doesn't. The legislation is ancillary. This is simply to help reduce the peak demand of our system, so that reduces the amount of energy and potentially gas that we would need to supply that.
But my question is, because of the legislation, if the Aliso is delayed, if that whole situation, then does that affect, or is this?
This is just designed to reduce our reliance on gas. And it was successful last summer. We're doing it again.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Okay, items 20, 21, and 22. Item 20, amendment number 1 to agreement number 472975 for consulting and quality assurance oversight services for the Financial and Human Resources Management Systems Replacement Project, KPMG LLP. Commissioner Noonan.
Okay, so having read the summary of item 20, there was a paragraph that definitely caught my eye. Quote unquote, the project has been on hold since June 2015. During the hold period, it was determined that procurement services should be incorporated into the financial portion of the project. This amendment will allow KPMG to provide analysis and recommendations that LADWP will use as a basis to expand and complete software requirements. These analysis and recommendations will provide a comprehensive statement of work requirements, documents, and evaluation criteria to select an enterprise-wide platform. So having read that, I read in detail the agendized item, and to me, which is just a red flag, is the fact that DWP has only contracted with KPMG for this task over the past 5 years, and we've paid KPMG over $36 million in contracts. Also, in this request, there are no other procurement firms being considered, and on principle, I find that this just looks very shady, and I cannot condone it.
Anybody wish to comment?
Yeah.
No.
So
That did not sound like full-throated support for that.
no. So, Commissioner, I'll bring Ben Trong to the table too to assist me with questions. But essentially, what's happened is we've contracted with KPMG for the quality assurance associated with a very large project. The replacement of our financial systems and key human resources systems has been discussed for a number of years now. As you know, we have some, I would call our financial systems like our budget system a classic, in a sense that it's, about that age. It's, I think, more than 20 years old. So we have some old, very, very old mainframe systems we rely upon for our financial reporting, and there's obviously limitations with those existing systems. Human resources, there's need for investment there as well, human resources system. That project had been moving forward. It was put on hold largely because of dedication of IT resources to other efforts in the department, the stabilization of the billing system, for example. And so there really weren't the IT resources to dedicate towards moving this large enterprise project forward. More recently, it's come to our attention that we were asked to include procurement in looking at this ERP, as they call it, this enterprise system. So, that wasn't initially scoped. It wasn't in the earlier discussions we had with KPMG. They were doing basically a strengths, weaknesses look at the existing systems we have and the various shadow systems that develop over the years, Excel spreadsheets and things like that. So,
and that took 2 years, 2.5 years.
Well, yeah, there was a hold, obviously, because we couldn't get the support from IT. To be effective, obviously, financial services and human resources, we really need to have strong support from our IT side within the department. And there just wasn't the resources available to us for this project. It was really dedicated towards meeting the billing system requirements. So as that system has become stabilized, there's an opportunity for us to start moving this overall project forward. And that's what we're trying to do. What's happened is we lost some time on this agreement with KPMG. There's work we just didn't do because things were on hold. Now that we're able to start moving this forward, we have dedicated support from IT as well. There are some opportunities to make changes within the existing budget for the KPMG contract. We're just shifting between tasks from phases of the contract. And then the contract was, for whatever reason, it was 32 months, and we're looking to make it a full 36 months or full 3-year contract with KPMG. That's the changes that we've brought forward today. On the procurement side, obviously, I can see Gwen over there. We're going to work very close with Gwen and her staff to ensure that we fold in their requirements, their needs within the overall ERP system as it's scoped out and designed. So there's been no software selected at this point in time. This is really to identify what our needs are as a utility, and then what software would best fit those needs, and then how we'd go through an implementation, making a selection at some point down the road of a system integrator for ourselves. But QAs serve a very valuable purpose, obviously, in a very large project like this. So we want to make sure that we have that strong QA support from KPMG throughout this contract term.
If I could interject before the speakers say anything, 32 million, more than 32 million of this effort has been our annual audit. So the bulk of the KPMG services is for the annual audits for the last several years. This is about 10% of that total contract, or kind of an extra project to take the knowledge they already have, leverage that into kind of creating this QA proposal and other services on the needs for the conversion. So Again, the vast bulk of this has just been the normal annual audit, and this is about $3.5 million to add on the services that Neil just described from the auditors who are already familiar with the financial system. I want to reiterate what Neil said. This was something that would have been and should have been started several years ago because of the major problems with the billing system. Essentially, all resources were put on fixing that billing system, and now we're trying to get everything in place so we can start looking at the conversion of our decades-old financial system. It's about 30 years old. Though some of the add-ons, the financial system tends to be kind of the financial system, then there's add-ons for accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing, HR. Some of the add-on items are newer, but in general, this is a 30-year-old system that is at least a decade behind the need to convert it. So with that,
I just wanted to add that this is a totally separate contract. It's not a part of the $36 million. It's a separate contract. And as it relates to procurement, one of the things that I approached the team with was because you'd raised the issue with your motion that you wanted to see case studies and make sure that procurement was included in any ERP that we were looking to implement. And they had not included supply chain previously. So I said, I think that we need to include procurement to address the concerns that you'd raised. Because otherwise, we would implement the system and then procurement would be 6 or 7 years down the road from now in terms of when it would be incorporated. So procurement is one part of it. Now let Ben talk about the other part that's added, and that's the fact that before we were using Oracle only in terms of considering who we would utilize, but now
we actually are looking for another, we want to actually look at also other vendors out there, not just for the Oracle, but now also looking for software, as well as the SI to come along with those software. So we could be considering some other players out there as well,
so
rather than stuck with the
SAP,
Oracle
other.
e-business suite. So that is a major change, and because of that, we need KPMG to come back and help us reevaluating the business process as well as system requirements to come up with the right requirement definition out there so that we can prepare the RP. They have done the phase 1 work under the contract, but they focus on the system integrator for the Oracle e-business suite. This time we want them to focus on not only the software, but also the business process and incorporating the procurement side of it, because it will affect the accounts payable module that we have to implement. And to GM comment as well, is that currently our system are on a legacy basis, and we are running into the end cycle of it because of the support from IT. The personnel that's supporting it, they are actually eligible to retire this year. And we are running into the end of the time to make sure that this legacy system will continue to work as is before it's going to break down. And we're talking about from the cost accounting system, we're talking about from general ledger system. The people that have been supporting us for the last 30 years, they're going to be gone, they're going to walk out the door. So it is very critical that we want to capture their subject matter expertise right now while we still have this contract with KPMG, so that we can continue to move forward to get the RP out on the street and get the project rolling.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I would like to respond.
Yeah.
Okay.
After you.
Thank you, Commissioner Funderburk. Again, I've stated this numerous times, but I have great respect for you, General Manager Wright, as well as you, Ms. Williams, and I think that you guys have made strides in terms of procurement and transparency. On this particular item, I just reviewed everything that was provided to me. I didn't see anything related to an audit. I'm sorry, sir, are you in the middle? Ben, I apologize, Christina. But also, the one thing that I really have gotten restless with is serving as a commissioner. that many times as commissioners we're forced to vote on an issue because the deadline has expired. The fact that this has been put on hold since June 2015, and this deals with a really, really, really big issue, quote unquote, the comprehensive statement of work requirements, documents, and evaluation criteria to select an enterprise-wide platform. The fact that this has been on hold for 2 years, I think, I know that everyone is trying their best to move the department forward, but personally as a commissioner, given the fact that I don't feel that the detail that should have been provided that is probably deserved by the ratepayers, I am not going to move on this item agenda.
Commissioner Funderburk, did you?
Yeah, perhaps because I was a little pretty close to the billing software issue. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I can understand Commissioner Noonan's comments about on the face of what we've got, but I know that everybody has really, in some cases, you all have worked 24/7. And I think that one of the things I would just like to do is to thank you for powering through the past 2 or 3 years on getting our IT up to date. I know that the thing that I just wanted to make sure of, Gwen, is that there's adequate support that you're getting in terms of making sure that Commissioner Noonan's motion actually comes to fruition. And I wouldn't even go so far as to suggest amending that motion or doing anything, but it sounds to me like you're moving pretty quickly here, and there will be a time at some point in the future, hopefully, when procurement talks to accounting, and we can know that you'll be able to do things without having key entry into the systems back and forth to know for reporting purposes. But I just want to make sure that I know that this is more of analysis and kind of feasibility phase.
Well, it is, but we are getting the support, because when I approached Stefan, who has, because one of the things that I see as an improvement is that there's a project management office now that's assisting with our IT projects, and Stefan is heading that up. And when I approached both Stefan and Ben about adding procurement to this, they were open to it and agreed that it was critical. Following up with Commissioner Noonan's request that we get some case studies on, what other entities we're dealing with in terms of procurement and diversity numbers. I went to an SAP conference to try and get some more information. I actually interviewed someone from Salt River Project who did a recent implementation, and also from the City of Tacoma Utility that did a recent implementation, got their lessons learned in terms of how critical they thought it was that procurement be involved in the initial ERP implementation. Their lessons learned about, for instance, City of Tacoma said that one key issue that they had found was that they asked procurement to add additional staff so that they could be fully involved full-time with the implementation, and they didn't do it. And as a result of it, they had people going to the hospital because they were overworked, and they had to end up delaying the implementation of the ERP because they hadn't done that. So those are the anecdotal stories that I've gathered, in lieu of a case study. But it is with the intent of the resolution that we talked to them and had procurement added into the scope of effort. So that's that's one part of this amendment in terms of giving more money. But as I said, probably the major part is the fact that we're no longer just considering Oracle, but we're considering SAP and others also.
So that'll introduce some more competition.
It introduces more competition, more flexibility, but also more scope on the side of, and maybe we should have been clearer about the audit, because we list the audit services in here just in terms of telling what other contracts KPMG has had with us, but it's a separate effort that they're doing for this as opposed to the audit work.
Yeah, and that's good, I think, for everybody to know, but I'm pretty sure that I understood that that's a totally separate unit, office.
But the long and short of it is, yes, I am getting support.
And so the software will enable the reporting on GO 156 similar categories. That will ultimately enable that, and KPMG is being given that.
Yeah. Well, it's important to me. I mean, I won't be around by the time this implementation takes place.
Yes, you will.
But life will be much easier for us once the implementation takes place.
Can we vacation together?
I want to go on that vacation.
If I could, so this is a small kind of first step, but I'm sensitive to Commissioner Noonan's comments in that this gives thought to some of the information and some of the audit comments and a number of the things that came out of CCB. This truly is building on the first step of a conversion process, and if there's issues with delaying this a couple weeks, I'd like to know. But the reality is we're, with this, embarking on what's going to be a significant investment in probably the second largest computer system with attached modules. It might even be more comprehensive than the billing system, though it's built in separate modules. And based on your comments, it does truly make sense to perhaps put this in the perspective of what the request is that we'd ask the commission to approve, and that this is step one of a number of different steps, and perhaps truly do talk about the entire project. As Gwen said, we have Stefan Tucker, who is our project manager, and I think I introduced him a while ago, but you might not remember that. And this is the first item that we have under the project management office that's moving forward as a new project. CC&B is already under there, and some other things. But truly, I know it was a recommendation of the ratepayer advocate, the controller, that the board be kept abreast of all major systems. And thinking about this, I would feel more comfortable, really, as well, if we put this in the context of you knowing what this step is over what's going to be an investment of, I have to say, more than $100 million over time.
Was there a problem with deferring this 2 weeks and coming back with that?
I think it's going to move forward.
You think it can move forward? Commissioner Noonan's okay with it moving forward.
And I state that with the highest respect, President Levine. But just as you appreciate hearing my perspectives and the facts that I've collected, I appreciate you responding to those. I know that you and Ms. Williams have done a stupendous job in moving us towards the right direction. I do think that things could have been more clearly expressed, but now having a better understanding of the facts, I realize the imperativeness in getting this done. And so you have my blessing with the request, and that you continue doing a great job and offering clear information in the future.
And we'll bring back a presentation then in the next couple of months as the whole project that we're looking forward. Yeah.
Great. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think I heard 4 ayes. So. Okay. That was a healthy discussion, just my editorial comment. Unsolicited. Item 21, agreement 474337 for credit risk assessment services, Experian, term of 1 year with 2 one-year renewal options for an amount not to exceed $1.5 million. Commissioner Noonan.
Okay, so very similarly, I not only reviewed through the agendized item, I did my own research, and I find it flabbergasting that throughout the years that I've served as a commissioner on this board, I've asked for procurement history, and what was shown to me is that the DWP has only contracted with Experian since 2007. And again, you're asking for another year with 2 one-year renewals, not to exceed $1.5 million. Regardless of this, why have we only been doing business with Experian when there's Equifax, D&B, TransUnion? Why aren't there other procurement bids being followed? And also, I'd like you to address the fact that Experian was sued on September 15th, 2015, because T-Mobile users, in fact, approximately 15 million users, filed a civil suit against Experian for being hacked. And so why would we want to continue doing business with this firm without getting other responses and competitive bids?
Thank you. Good morning. George Rafael, Director of Customer Operations. I'll just give a little bit of background as far as how we utilize Experian, or basically the credit bureaus. We primarily utilize them for assessing deposit, or determining the need to assess a deposit for our residential and our commercial customers. We're also looking to be able to use this to expedite the recertification for low-income customers by doing some income verification, and rather than having them resubmit their income history, that we could be able to automatically renew it. In this, we utilize, in order to support our customers and to get an assessment, we utilize a specific credit rating, which is called the Telerisk score. This doesn't provide a hit. Normally, like if somebody's applying for a car loan or a home loan, they run a full credit inquiry, and too many inquiries start affecting customer scores. With the Telerisk score, it's very light. It's restricted as far as the information that we have access to and that we receive, but it's also an industry standard for utilities, and it gives us a good barometer whether we need to assess a credit on a customer or not. In this, we have had a contract with Experian for the past 10 years. This past contract expired in 2016. It was a previous three-year contract. But
why weren't other entities like Equifax, D&B, TransUnion even approached on this contract? Why would you remain loyal to a firm that is being sued by over 15 million people?
Yes. So as that contract was expiring, we did issue we developed and issued an RFP in order to do this, and we distributed it to all the credit agencies. TransUnion, Equifax, and Dun & Bradstreet, to name a few. Dun & Bradstreet gave us some feedback that they only handle commercial customers and do not have the information related to residential, so they decided not to submit a proposal. TransUnion did not respond at all, and then Equifax had several questions in that they felt they weren't prepared to submit a proposal at this time, but they did request that for the future contract, they'd like to spend some time with us to understand how we're utilizing it, what services that they could develop, and so on, to be able to meet with us, and we've agreed to be able to meet with them when they're ready to do so. So that left us with Experian. The pricing in terms of the structure was set up in a way to give us annual 3 one-year options. So in order to give us the flexibility to opt out when we need to, if there's issues, whether it's in terms of their data integrity, their services, their pricing, or actually the pricing is set, but it gives us the flexibility to be able to opt out. In terms of the credit rating, the lapse that happened, we are set up in a structure that limits the access that we have access to. So we don't get access to any personal identification information. It is strictly the Telerisk score and the IntelliRisk score, which is for commercial businesses. And then in terms of the income verification, once we run that for low income, it'll be limited to the household income that's been reported, and that'd be it. So we're limiting basically the vulnerability that we would have to be part of an identity hack or such.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion? Second. Commissioner Funderburk, are you articulating a question or comment?
You know what? I have to apologize. I was excuse myself when maybe you asked, Commissioner Noonan had asked a question about why the other providers, and I know you probably answered it. Would
Yeah,
you mind?
they kind of went through each of them.
Okay.
You can repeat it.
Would you mind repeating that? 'Cause I just
Sure. We distributed to, we went through an RFP process. We did deliver, it was sent out to TransUnion, Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax, and Experian, primarily all the large credit bureaus. TransUnion did not respond. Dun & Bradstreet informed us that they only are able to handle commercial customers, commercial data, so they declined to respond to it. Equifax had some questions that they felt they weren't ready at this time to respond, so they declined to, but they requested that if they can spend some time with us to understand the processes, how we're utilizing the data, what we're looking for, in order to prepare them for the next RFP. And we've agreed to do that.
So is there an urgency on this matter?
We did issue the RFP. We're ready to proceed. We've, given the previous contract expired in 2016, we did establish an interim one that limits us to specific data to be able to access. But there's not necessarily, we've got several months until that interim contract expires. But we are just trying to identify ways that we can get our processes set up and get the integration established.
I'll support this, but I did have concerns about what Commissioner Noonan raised, and I think that having more significant outreach on something like this, even though it's probably not a huge thing in the grand scheme of things, but to try to get at least one or two other bidders and would go a long way toward making the procurement look cleaner. So I will vote for it, but and again, I will vote for it. I have a good degree of trust in Gwen. Is this you, Gwen? Okay. But I have a good degree of trust in our enterprise. Okay, but I think she raised some concerning things.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Funderburk. The one thing that really stood out and that troubles me greatly is on page 1 of the agendized item. It specifically states that Equifax indicated that they would like to meet with LAD-DLEP staff to better understand the requirements so that they can be, quote-unquote, relevant and competitive with a response next time. So one thing that I have really tried to better alongside Gwen Williams is transparency and equality in the procurement process. And I do feel that many times entities as big as TransUnion, Equifax, DMV, they don't even want to bid because they know that DWP has favorites. And I want to make sure that that changes over time. And so I would request that you address Equifax's request to meet with staff so that they can, quote unquote, better understand the requirements so that they can be more competitive with the next response. Because I do think it's very unusual for Experian to have the contract since 2007. To me, that just does not sound forthright and correct. So I would appreciate you meeting with them. And that being said, hopefully there's a more competitive process the next time around.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
So you have that 3-1.
3-1.
Noonan opposed. Thank you. Okay, we move to item 23, sustainability. Agreement number 474317 for acquisition and management of Habitat Lands, Heron Pacific LLC, DBA Wildlands. The agreement is for a term of 3 years and an amount not to exceed $12 million. Commissioner Noonan.
Hi, how are you? It's always nice to see you.
Thank you.
So again, I apologize for missing the last board meeting and closed session meeting. And truly, my my honest, forthright question is, does this relate to mitigation efforts in Owens Valley? Because I'm unfamiliar with this request, and so I want to understand if this is something that we are responsible for. I don't know if it ties in, given the area that it's in. I haven't heard of this before, the habitat lands in Huron Pacific, so perhaps if you could elaborate and educate me.
I've got a brief presentation, 3 or 4 minutes. We'll give kind of a reason for the contract and what we're asking you to consider today.
Well, first of all, does this relate to mitigation efforts up north?
In a way, is what it is whenever you develop a project and you're taking habitat, you have to replace it. And briefly, is what it is it's under the California Endangered Species Act, and it's associated with incidental take permit of endangered or threatened animals, reptiles, birds, and stuff like that. And we have to provide replacement habitat at a ratio of either 1-to-1 all the way up to 5-to-1, depending on the quality of habitat we're taking and the quality of the habitat we're replacing it with. The process is kind of complex, and we don't have the resources in-house to do it. That's why we're seeking a firm to do this for us, where they have to go out and identify potentially suitable replacement habitat, conduct a biological assessment, get it approved by Fish and Wildlife, acquire the land, and then we have to implement some enhancement like restore roads, maybe put fences, things like that, and then we convey that land to Fish and Wildlife or some entity to manage it for them. And then lastly, provide money that goes into a fund where the interest, it's an endowment account where they can manage this land into perpetuity. Specifically right now, our need is associated with the Barron Ridge Transmission Line Project, the Barron Ridge Switching Station, and the Beacon Solar Project, which are shown kind of on this. I don't even know if I have a thing. Barron Ridge is up here, solar project, the Beacon, the Barron Ridge Substation, and the Transmission Line Project. And as you can see, we've got quite a footprint when we were installing the transmission line. And then also the Beacon Solar Project. And as you can see, it's surrounded by tortoise and Mojave ground squirrel habitat and some other species, kit fox, things like that. And so up here, we're replacing the land at 3-to-1.
What do you mean replacing the land 3-to-1? The species?
No. Is what we are is we've taken out of use, if you will, of this land that was habitat for various species, and we have to go acquire it elsewhere. A lot of it's being picked up near Barstow, California City, and places like that. Particularly right now, it's for the Mojave Desert Tortoise. It was listed in 1980 as threatened with possible extinction. And this was during the construction of the transmission line. Here's at the Beacon Solar Project at one of our fences, even though that's on the outside of the fence, and the Mojave ground squirrel, which was listed in 1993. This is going to be an as-needed contract, which means we have an immediate need for 324 acres. This will allow us to provide compensatory mitigation up to about 1,000 acres. We may not need that, but we may. We looked at some of our future and ongoing projects, such as the North Haywee seismic, the new dam, like the North Haywee project. If you're not aware of these projects, they will be coming to you for your consideration in the near future. There's also,
if I may interrupt for a second.
Sure.
Mr. Bratovich, can you elaborate on whether or not this investment will give us credit for the mitigation efforts and the commitments that we have up north?
Well, these give us mitigation credits related to this project. So this is, completely different from what we do under the water agreement. So this is not related to the Inyo County LA Standing Committee or any of the obligations related to the water agreement. This is related specifically to this solar project.
To the Beacon Solar Project?
Well, several projects.
And other projects that we have coming. So this is for those projects that are identified with this contract would allow us to use the same company for the same services for the other projects.
It won't help with the Owens Lake or anything like that.
Okay, so that brings more clarification to where I was coming from, because I hadn't seen this before up until today. Okay.
Okay. And so there's a couple of additional projects that we expect to use this for, and it could also include riparian habitat or Joshua tree, forest mitigation, things like that. And really that's, we received 4 proposals, and we ended up with selecting one, and that's in your packet.
Okay.
That process we went through.
I think I have one question. You know, as my recollection can recall, I know that there were many entities interested in the Beacon Solar project, and so are we being subsidized to invest in this work, or is this something that is taken out of our net profit?
It would come out of our profit, but is what it was. It was one of the conditions when we purchased the project from Nextera. They had actually gone and got a lot of the permits. They got the conditional use permit from Kern County. They got these incidental take permits from the wildlife agencies, because we're right in the middle of actually some really good desert tortoise habitat. And in all of these projects, we get a permit. They say it has a biological assessment. They go, okay, you're going to have to come up with replacement habitat. And trying to work with our staff, we just don't have the resources in-house to identify really quality habitat, negotiate with private property owners and things like that. And these firms, 2 of the firms already had gone a long way and had Fish and Wildlife actually approve and certify the land as acceptable. And the others weren't at that stage yet.
Thank you.
But it's coming, I guess, out of the project costs.
Okay.
That's why when we evaluate a project, the mitigation is usually incorporated in the cost of the project, so we know a full cost of here's the actual infrastructure and here's the mitigation costs, and those are factored into whether it's a viable project or not.
Yeah, and I'm sure, as you recall, the Beacon Solar project was probably one of the biggest projects that we evaluated, so I do not recall that line item being present. But that being said, this was very helpful, so thank you.
Yeah, in the past, we just gave it to the Desert Tortoise Preserve up by California City. They were sole source. With all the renewable energy projects taking place in Southern California, I mean, solar, a lot of land, there's a bunch of companies now starting to be formed or, developed to offer this service. So this is the first time we've gone out with an RFP for this kind of service.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Thank you. Very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a speaker card on agenda item 24. Barbara?
Yes, the speaker is Fred Betharian, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning or good early afternoon. I'm here for 2 reasons. One is to request the board to award the contract to APCO as the lowest bidder. Basically, APCO has done and exceeded the good faith effort by doing the good faith effort, but by going one step further and doing a good faith action by naming in its bid document a woman business enterprise subcontractor for a major portion of the contract. So we have met and exceeded the requirement of simply quote unquote effort by turning that into an action. So therefore, the APCO should be awarded the contract, and there is no good reason for LADWP to pay more for the same valve. Having said that, reason number 2 is that if the board is unwilling to do so, we request the board to defer the matter, this item, for 2 weeks. And we will make up that 2 weeks in fabrication of the valves. Yesterday, APCO has made an offer of settlement to resolve approximately 25 contracts that has been taken away from APCO. This bid is very important part of the resolution of all claims. APCO greatly appreciate the deferral for 2 weeks as we seek to eliminate animosities and restart clean slate to best serve LADWP. I'm here if you have any questions to answer that.
Thank you.
May I answer any question you have?
We generally don't engage in a question and answer with public comment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Who's going to present this item? Gwen?
Gwendolyn Williams, Director of Supply Chain Services.
Susie Rogani, Director of WETS.
One of the things that we do when we receive funds from external organizations like EPA, DOE, et cetera, is when they're federally funded, we have to follow their guidelines. So although we have an SBE program which requires no good faith efforts, it's just we set a mandatory goal and they meet the goal. And as long as they meet the goal, they're responsive. But when we have federally funded contracts, we have to follow their guidelines. And they require that even though they meet the goal, they must submit what they call good faith efforts. And that's a prescribed guideline of actions that they have to take. APCO, even though, as he asserts, that they did meet the goal, but they did not submit good faith efforts as required by the feds. We have clearly stated in our solicitation documents that those documents are due 3 days after the bid, and APCO did not turn them in at that time. In fact, they did not turn them in until they submitted their protest. Therefore, in compliance with the guidelines with our federal funders, we declare them non-responsive.
Any questions or comments? No. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to recuse myself from item 26, but we will then not have a quorum.
Is Commissioner Noonan returning, or is she?
I assume she's returning. Let me see if I can go find her. But I may not be able to go find her.
Perhaps the assistant clerk
someone
will
else is
take a
going to
look.
try to find her. I assume I should recuse myself. But,
She's coming.
She's coming?
She's coming.
Okay. That will solve the problem.
And this will be the final item until closed session.
Correct. We
So
can,
after this one's resolved, I'll meet everybody in closed session.
all right, we will, that's correct.
Commissioner Noonan, you are necessary for a quorum because I have to recuse myself from item.
And I'm going to vote against it because I don't want you to leave us locally. So.
Okay. I'll see you soon.
Item 26, resolution authorizing travel of Board President Mel Levine to Sacramento, California.
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Is there a motion?
I moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Remorsefully, yes.
All right. With that, the board shall recess to closed session and shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Section 54-957.1 of the California Government Code.
It's freezing.
Can you send these to me? No, I'm going to send them to me right now. And then I'm going to
you.